This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead this Sunday morning. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com in the studio, live via phone from Southern California. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning, everybody.
And you've been out there for a while now doing the radio show in the mornings, and I was able to listen to a lot of them. A lot of good information obviously passed out on the radio show, and we want to tap into your live on the scene experience over the past couple of days. It was a fun couple of days. We're going to get into it and go race by race to talk about it. Before we do that, though, just a little bit of an overview. Reported yesterday, the crowd over 61,000, 37,000 reported on Friday. And just overall, it seemed to me like, save for what we'll talk about in just a moment, the Classic and the controversy there, I thought it was a really nice weekend of racing. What was the buzz out there?
Buzz is an interesting question or word. It was a very subdued, I thought, atmosphere yesterday. There was not the high energy buzz that you frequently get, that anticipatory situation that has an electricity in the air. And I imagine that part of that goes back to the major stars that ended up being absent. It doesn't take away from the results and the quality of the races and the performances at all, but there was a palpable lack of high energy in terms of an ambiance. But beside that, everyone had a great time. Had a little bit of a weather hiccup, obviously overnight, that affected some things, including the main track. But otherwise, Santa Anita, a fabulous host. All the improvements, $30 million in upgrades. The place looked fabulous. All kinds of new nooks and crannies and special rooms and places for people to enjoy the festivities and the wagering. And from that standpoint, the place is spectacular. It's, for a 75-year-old building, it's state-of-the-art and tremendous time had by all. Yeah,
it looked like it was a good couple of days out there, and it's just coming through the NBC broadcast, it seemed like there was a lot of just enthusiasm, maybe, as you say, if not for the lack of stars, just for a couple of good days of betting. It was a little slow that way on Friday, but then came back with a vengeance on Saturday. And again, we'll go through the races race by race, and let's start things out. Let's delve right into it with the Classic, and then we'll go back and go chronologically, but with the story being the Classic and the controversy. So I put together the Equidaily page last night. That was, the big headline of the Classic. Bayern gets it done, but the incident at the gate. And before the guys run the race, I'll just tell people, Bayern is the number 7 horse, comes in, bothers number 6 Shared Belief, who then in turn bumps into number 4 Marino, changing the complexion of the race. And I'll also tell people, then watch, Toast in New York comes over and causes a little problem too, although I think Toast in New York was kind of herded in by the 10-horse Footbridge. But there was a lot of activity there. Steve, I'm going to be interested to hear your take on this. I thought they should have DQ'd the horse. Now, they don't typically do things at the start. I get that. But this completely changed the complexion of the race. And I believe in steward's discretion, but I think steward's discretion should be if you are virtually certain that the outcome wouldn't have been changed, then you use steward's discretion. Otherwise, these guys are just becoming clairvoyants, and I think that's what happened yesterday. So I said earlier, and I'd be interested to hear your take too, because I know you were high on Toast in New York. I have a dog in the fight because I had $2 on the late double, which with Toast in New York was going to pay $1,200. So I was certainly looking for Toast in New York to get up there coming down the stretch, and when that didn't happen, that was changed the complexion of my wagering weekend a little bit. So as I say, I had a dog in the fight. That given, with what Toast in New York did at the start, if they'd taken him down too, I wouldn't have been totally taken aback. But they just don't seem to do anything at the start of the race. Stewards have different sets of standards, it seems like, at the start, on the clubhouse turn, on the backstretch, as compared to the stretch, where obviously the vast majority of DQs happen. And so They didn't do it. It seems like the buzz I picked up last night, and I'll be interested to hear how it plays out further today, but a lot of the pundits felt that was a bad non-DQ decision. Bayern gets it done, number 7 over number 9, Toast of New York. Number 13, California Chrome, runs a very credible third in the race. Number 6, Shared Belief, overcomes the trouble early to run fourth. Tonalist 5th. I thought Tonalist was the one to beat coming into the race, so I was a little disappointed there. But as I say, a little more disappointed when Toast of New York couldn't complete my $1,200 double. But I'll be interested to hear your take on the race, your take on the non-DQ, and also touch on a little bit of the fact that from the NBC broadcast, when California Chrome came out on the track, he was a real fan favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time his name came up and was introduced, the crowd absolutely appreciated, and he was clearly the preferred star to Jerry Hollendorfer's Northern Cal-based Shared Belief. The elements of this are extensive, and there's a lot of different discussions to have. First of all, if you work backwards from what happens at the finish, and we'll work back to the start, from a race standpoint, the way in which Bayern was able to turn back Toast of New York and California Chrome was exceptionally impressive, and his heart, as demonstrated by doing all the running, it was in evidence. And so if you can neutralize the beginning of the race and not add into the equation that Moreno most likely in a perfect start and in a clear break where everyone breaks like arrows in a straight line, you can assume that Moreno would have prompted with Castellano underneath Bayern, and of course that's where your question of how the race outcome is affected begins. Beyond that, once the running is underway and the horses are lining up the way they are, from that standpoint, Bayern, Toast of New York, who dogged him nonstop, Jamie Spencer with a heads-up move, that space that was vacated early by Bayern's left turn, Toast of New York, what was happening there was Jamie Spencer was taking the opportunity to go from the 9-hole with that space that was opened up. He rushes to get up to about the 3-path, so he's got a better stalking position. He righted his ship pretty quickly and just kind of comes up against Moreno. He does not really affect anybody if you watch much more carefully, and particularly if you watch the shot from behind the gate, which is the most important shot that we have. The head-on makes everything look egregious beyond description. If you watch the shot that's available at DRF, which includes the HRTV feed that shows several shots from behind the gate, you get a much better understanding of what was going on. That all said, Toast of New York ran a spectacular race for a horse making a dirt debut. California Chrome did exactly what he was predicted to do by Art and Alan Sherman. They said, we're delighted with the 13. It gives him exactly the kind of trip he wants, and he did everything but win. And all of the things we talked about all week leading up, the way he looked, the way he was acting, that he had clearly come back to his good California Chrome, that in fact, shipping to Philadelphia probably was simply a money grab to take the bonus money, and that got him jump-started toward this start. Art Sherman said, you'll see a different horse here than you did in Philadelphia. All that came to pass, and all credit to Art Sherman. Jamie Osborne, what an aggressive campaign with Toast of New York. 3 trips to the United States, 3 different surfaces, grass, synthetic, and dirt, and it may turn out now that dirt is going to be his best surface. And anybody who reads my write-ups and listen to me at all for the past, not just 3 weeks, but going all the way back to the Pacific Classic, this was my play and the horse that I wanted to key off of. Second year in a row, declaration of war last year. It got very good efforts, and from that standpoint, the top three finishers deserve all kinds of credit. Work your way back, and now we get to Shared Belief. And Shared Belief and Mike Smith, it was with Smith after the race, and he was bitterly disappointed. Jerry Hollendorfer was not just disappointed. He was furious. And Hollendorfer, a guy who isn't cheery on a good day. So from their standpoint, they feel that the start absolutely ruined their chances. If you watch the replay again, as much as Shared Belief does get absolutely mauled early, he then, past the grandstand, is actually in the clear and is sitting a very comfortable open spot. And it took him a little bit longer. He kind of got his dander up. When horses get bounced like that, they will sometimes get super aggressive, and Smith had to sort of settle him down. Once he was settled down, and he put in his run and ran incredibly, you just don't know how he would have been positioned with a clean start. That gets us to the gate. The difficulty here is that the stewards involved in this scenario, Kim Sawyer and Scott Cheney and Tom Ward, if you watch California racing regularly, you know the rule that they are governed by, 1699, and Scott Cheney's already being assailed for saying something about where horses are reasonably expected to finish. He's not speculating about that. He's not saying, oh, we judge the horse based on his odds, and if he's a hopeless long shot, we don't allow for the opportunity that he was not given a chance. That's not the interpretation of the rule. They do not, as a day-to-day stewarding practice, disqualify out of the gate unless things are so egregious that you are left with absolutely no recourse. And there's people saying, that they have the one jump rule, that every horse and the rider is given the opportunity to straighten their horses out of the gate. There's nowhere that's written. They have a stewarding philosophy, and they generally, almost always, leave those early machinations out of the gate alone. And for the people who want to say, it was intentional, he steers into, he doesn't do anything of the sort. And in fact, you can see Martin Garcia try to straighten as best he can immediately when he sees that Bayern is veering to the left. He's a sharp-breaking horse, and horses will always gravitate to open space. So for him to go naturally, and they also naturally will move toward the rail. So if he's out in front with one jump, the horse is going to naturally start to lean left. Garcia did what he could initially, but the damage is done. And you've got the chain reaction, and you've got three horses, jostling down inside. And Rich Migliore speculated that Moreno's saddle slipped, and Castellano was really put into a difficult jackpot. He seems to settle at a certain point, but again, it's too late. Moreno needs to be right up on the lead immediately, at least in open air, with Bayern maybe out ahead of him a little bit to his outside, but Moreno's race is over immediately. So did this start affect the finish? Of course. I mean, it's not even, you can't even debate whether it affects the outcome, because it changes the way horses were naturally expected to line up. But if this is the consistent treatment that the stewards in this jurisdiction are practicing, then as long as they're consistent, you can't complain. Because if you say, they should have taken Bayern and placed him behind Shared Belief, or placed him behind even Moreno, well, that's all well and good. If it's a jurisdiction that does that as a matter of philosophy and practice, interpreting their rules, then okay. But that's not what they do there. And the people that have been frustrated for however long they've been interpreting the rule that way, would it be fair to them to suddenly, because it's a $5 million race, suddenly say, we're going to interpret the rule instead of what we usually do, which is to leave these alone. We're going to take this horse down because it's a more important race. That isn't a good answer either. So you either need if you want to complain about this, you need a philosophical interpretation of the rules that extend to the way horses come out of the gate, and that it doesn't matter where a foul occurs in the running of a race, it's going to be penalized. It's going to be a penalty is going to be imposed, and there's going to be a disqualification. So, on the flip side is, I'd rather it be consistent, and I think everybody would rather it be consistent. So if this is the way they govern day in, day out, then you can't get too worked up over this. The other ramifications and the other elements of this, of course, involve what seems to be a very fashionable phenomenon of hating on Bob Baffert. And anything involving Baffert now seems to get everybody's dander up, and everybody is very fashionable now to criticize and attack Baffert every chance you get. And maybe he opens himself up to that. That's a distinct possibility, but it's not exactly helpful in terms of a situation like this. I'd also be concerned that internationally, the people saying, "Oh, it's because it was a European horse that was second," that there's no call. You get that approach, and you worry that the international community says, "Oh, it's a home cooking scenario." There's all these tangents, Seth, and it'll make for a provocative discussion. But the most important discussion out of it is, how do jurisdictions and the rules get uniformly interpreted by the stewards? And that's at the heart of this. Beyond that, you just wish that you didn't have to have this as a asterisk and as a hanging chad on the whole proceedings.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate way to end the 2 days, which up until then had really been a great couple of days of racing, and that just kind of left a little bit of an empty feeling. I don't disagree with you at all, and that's what stewards do, and I don't think it's only out in California. I think the start of the race, there's a lot of leeway given there, and I think you may be right. Maybe this is the jumping point for a broader conversation, because I've said on the show many times before, I have a problem with that. The starting gate, the clubhouse turn, the backstretch, they just don't seem to look at fouls the same way, and I think they should. And to me, I think there should be some leeway given out of the gate, but this horse came in 3 paths and really knocked a couple of horses. To me, it was a DQ kind of a situation, but I can't disagree. On a consistency basis, maybe it is the right move, but maybe it should be time for a little broader discussion of, the severity of how much leeway is given at the start of a race, because to me, as I say, seemed like that was kind of a DQ situation. But let's move on and start taking a look at some of the other races, because we have a bunch to talk about here. Let's go back to Friday, and I didn't pull up the video of the 2 juvenile turf races, but of course the Friday action started out with the juvenile turf, and let's just touch on that briefly, because Hootenanny gets a good start to the weekend for trainer Wesley Ward. I didn't use Hootenanny in my mix because I just wasn't, the talent level was clearly there. Ships the horse over to Europe and does very well, but I just wasn't quite convinced on the distance of a mile. But Hootenanny gets it done under Franco Dettori.
This was some tremendous performance.
Yeah.
He was eight tons of the best, and he seemed a little keen early, but got himself in great position. And what a terrific performance by Luck of the Kitten, frankly, who was given no chance really by anybody. And Hootenanny, I just stared in disbelief. I mean, I just was amazed at the ease with which he took control and drew clear. I was impressed. What can you say? And of course, it was part of a funny and fun couple of days in terms of Wesley Ward, and a terrific cup for him and Blake Heap, his West Coast stable manager. And one of the things that Wesley Ward doesn't mind, having to not go out to California, he's got Blake Heap there, and he does a tremendous job. And it's just like Wesley Ward to not show up for these. He wanted to see his son in the cross-country event that he participated in on Friday. Wesley is a singularly unique guy, and this was a good result. And frankly, it started a number of disappointments, at least until the mile, for the Europeans.
Yeah.
They were basically kept at bay with a whip and a chair. They were getting their clock cleaned up until Carracanti.
Yeah, War Envoy, the 7-2 favorite, finishes 12th in the field of 14. So, and as you say, Wesley Ward exacta there got the weekend off nicely for him. Another very good performance, and we do have the stretch run here. Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, 70 cent to the dollar favorite Golden Sense gets out there on the front end and just takes them all the way around. I had the top two in flip-flop order. I had Tapiture on top over Golden Sense. I had Pants and Fire, the number 4 horse, the third-place finisher in my mix. But I'll tell you, I thought number 9, Tapiture, was going to go by Golden Sense at the top of the stretch. Didn't turn out that way. Nice gutty repeat performance from Golden Sense.
This was a spectacular performance. He was being hounded immediately. John Velasquez on Vickers in Trouble. I mean, literally, Golden Sense gutted Vickers in Trouble, who comes loping home eased under the wire and then had to be banned off. I mean, that's what Golden Sense did to Vickers in Trouble. And indeed, when Tapiture was ranging up, I mean, after the early fractions, Tapiture ranging up, and it looks like Rosie Napravnik is going to go right on by. Not to be. And not only did Golden Sense hold Tapiture at bay, he was, basically toying with him to some extent. This was a mammoth effort. And Golden Sense, what can you say? And, of course, one of the things that it did was set up a huge bait and switch for sprint, because everybody said, oh, gosh, look at Golden Sense. Rich Tapestry's a slam dunk in the sprint now. He was a slam dunk, on everybody's multis. He buried everybody. We'll get to the Hong Kong Phooey in a minute.
I like the Hong Kong Phooey. The Juvenile Phillies Turf, again, we don't have the stretch run here, but certainly, got off the good weekend off to a start for Chad Brown. Very good weekend for Chad Brown. Lady Eli gets it done. And I have to admit, I didn't have her in my mix, but as I talked to people on television all last week, I was alone there. Everybody had this one in the mix. I had Randy Moss on with me on Thursday. He had a couple of horses he really liked, Lady Eli and Stone-tastic, and Lady Eli gets it done pretty convincingly as the 5-2 choice. Chad Brown, Irad Ortiz on board.
Well, I will avoid. I will avoid. I'm not going to dwell on you leaving Lady Eli out of the mix. I mean, she was in many ways one of the most likely winners on the 2 days. I mean, it was spectacular as much as Chad Brown, who isn't a guy who gushes, as much as Chad Brown was, particularly after the Ms. Grillo, just so high and complimentary, and basically explaining that he didn't think she could lose. He's not one to talk like that after a race, but this is a very special filly. Richmond Leori actually invoked a 2-year-old version of Goldakova, and I don't think that's an unapt comparison. This is a 2-year-old filly on the grass getting a 96 buyer. There's no telling what this filly is. It's just spectacular, and there'll be a lot of fun watching this one go forward.
Absolutely, and as I said, got off a nice start to the weekend for Chad Brown.
Well, and note, don't get lost in translation that Sunset Glow. I mean, here's Wesley Ward running 1-2 in the Juvenile Boys Turf, and then he's second in here with that Sunset Glow, who in fact was on the West Coast all summer and clearly is okay in her own right. And Wesley Ward, we'll get to the other Ward success, but in the meantime, here's 2 races in, and he's got a first, a second, and a second in the 2 juvenile turfs.
All right, let's shift out now to the feature on Friday. Race 9 on Friday, the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and number 10, Untappable. Winds up being the favorite in here. I had her in the mix, certainly, but I thought Close Hatches was going to rebound. But, boy, Close Hatches, I mean, you knew on the turn. Close Hatches started to back up. She winds up 11th in the field of 11. Close Hatches really disappointing for the second race in a row, and maybe throws that division into a little bit of a flux now as far as the Eclipse, although she was so good early in the year. But it's Untappable winning. Number 7, Don't Tell Sophia, a really nice second, just gets up over Ayatapa, and I thought that one was intriguing as well. But Untappable gets it done in the distaff.
She was spectacular, and she got back to the races that we saw her running in the spring. And Steve Asmussen, Scott Blasi, David Fisk, Ron Winchell, Rosie Napravnik, all of them with a absolutely brilliant job handling this filly, coming from a tricky post, and of course that was part of the difficulty in handicapping this race with 4 speeds lined up outside. The Peruvian, Ria Antonia, Untappable, and Close Hatches. Who's going to lose ground, who's going to be forced wide, and so forth. It turned out to be Close Hatches. She is finished and will go off to the breeding shed, and that's what the run at the Spinster was. And I had kind of I kept her down. I think I made her my third choice just out of respect. But Untappable, this is one of those benefits that when you're on site, when you get to see these horses, there are certain ones that when you're looking for that final deciding factor, when you have trouble, separating contenders, when you see them work like Untappable did, and you don't even necessarily have to be here because a lot of these works are on tape, on video file, whether it's the Breeders' Cup website or any of the other HRTD, and had a library of these. She was spectacular. I mean, she had works, and just the way she was moving was just exceptional. And she made it very clear that she was ready for a big effort again. And Napravnik, when on the turn, when Napravnik looks over and just to see what's inside of her, you knew this race was over. And that's the way she won earlier in the year. And she's, frankly, if there was a maybe if there was a 3-year-old non-sex divided championship, she might really have a case for being the 3-year-old champion, period. But good for her, and good for Don't Tell Sophia. How about Phil Simms, the small-time, long-time trainer out of Kentucky, $1,000 yearling purchase that he fell in love with at Keeneland when she was a baby, and all the credit goes to him. The patience that has been displayed by him and Jerry Namey, spectacular job. The 6-year-old mare at the peak of her performance level, and you couldn't be more delighted. She did everything but win, and Sadler. You mentioned Ayatapa. For those that were looking at her, and I didn't know what to do. In postscript, it's easy to look at her and compare her to 2 years ago. Switch. Remember that nice filly that Sadler had? She had a lousy middle part of the year, and she came into the filly and mare sprint that year looking, kind of iffy and not looking all that formful. And sure enough, Sadler able to get a big performance out of Switch that year to be third at a nice price. Same thing here, and Ayatapa gets nosed out of the photo. Ria Antonia ran another nice race, and feel good for Ron Paolucci, who gets vilified by people on the internet. And Paolucci, I'm sure he would have loved to have hit the board or better, but certainly Ria Antonia finished up her career. She's in the sales catalog Monday at Fasig-Tipton.
All right, and just before we move on, the end of the day on Friday was highlighted by Rosie Napravnik's retirement announcement. What was the buzz out there? It
was stunning, and this really, if we didn't have this annoying controversy to deal with from the Classic, the story, the postscript sidebar would absolutely be Rosie Napravnik's emotional announcement of her retirement seconds after she crosses the wire on Untappable. People were, kind of stunned and at the same time touched and emotional and happy for her and husband Joe Sharp. It took everybody by surprise, and I actually feel badly that she's going to be a little overshadowed here with the hubbub about the Classic. I mean, clearly she should be the other story beside the result coming out of the weekend.
All right, let's move on to Saturday, and let's pop through some of these fairly quickly as we're running out of time.
Sure.
But Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, there was the huge upset there, had people kind of worried that maybe the track was going to wind up to be speed favoring on Saturday. Take Charge Brandy for D. Wayne Lucas, his 20th Breeders' Cup win. Gets it done on the front end, as Lucas has tended to do in big races over the years. She goes out, takes the lead early, and wins it at 61-1. Top Decile runs second, Wonder Gal third. Favored Angela Renee, the 3-1 favorite, 10th in the field of 12.
Now, and clearly, the early part of the day, and and for people who are carrying on, I mean, this is one of my other favorite hobbies, which is to criticize the track supers and they cooked the track. It rained. It rained for the first time in 8 months here, over a half an inch of rain, and Dennis Moore sealed that track Friday night in anticipation of the rain. And so until they're able to get the moisture out, and until then there was luckily some wind and some high sun, and so the track at least got dried, and he was able to drop the harrows and slowly and steadily level that track a little bit. But it's California. There's going to be speed. Speed is going to be at a premium, and it's not anybody cooking the track. It's the ambient circumstances play into this. And so here's obviously a horse that got carried along and benefited. In the meantime, Top Decile and Wonder Gal, they came from mid-pack, and they were making up ground. They got beat a half a length and a length. It's not like this filly won by 8 on a obviously biased track. Yes, it certainly helped her, but I just just like at Saratoga and at Belmont, when it rains and the track has to be sealed and then unsealed and the moisture has to be taken out of it, it's going to be fast.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Yeah.
And knock off the hand wringing and the teeth gnashing.
And as the day progressed, we kind of it certainly evened out. Fifth race on Saturday.
This was exceptional.
Yesterday, the Philly Mayor Turf Grade 1 event, 1.25 miles, and hats off to the New York bred program. Chad Brown continues his big weekend. Day at the Spa takes him all the way around. 2 races ago, right up here at Saratoga, facing state breds in the Yaddo. Followed that up with the win in the Grade 1 First Lady at Keeneland, and then follows it up on Saturday, a front-running effort to win. Day at the Spa gets it done over Stephanie's Kit, and it's a Chad Brown exacta in here, running third, Just a Judge, coming out of the win in the E.P. Taylor most recently. But boy, what a performance as she cuts the corner, and we see the stretch run here, just kind of sprints away a little bit from him. Day at the Spa gets it done.
Well, this was a wonderful finish to her career, although owner Steve Lehman, the first question I asked Steve was, what are you doing about Monday? Is she going to stay in the catalog, or will she be an out from the Fasig-Tipton sale? And he said they're having a meeting tonight, and they'll make a decision. But, sometimes you have to believe your eyes, and you have to realize as the summer progressed, and as we got to the fall, Day at the Spa was clearly in the best form of her entire outstanding career. And you looked at this group of fillies and mares, and you could see there really wasn't any obvious other speed that was going to make it hard on her. So then the question became, is she going to be able to make the 1.25 miles? When you are looking at that circumstance, understand that the 1.25 miles is going to allow her, because of the distance, it's going to allow her to go slower early. The longer distance, the longer a horse is going, and the easier they get to go on the front part of the race, the first half of the race, the first half mile or so, or 3/4, that's a benefit to them. And so with her able, and as Lehman was quoted, he always asked Castellano for a 113. If you can give her a 113 3/4, she's going to be tough to pass at any distance. and that included here. And when she quickened away off the turn, I started to laugh. I said, she's gonna win this. And just a tremendous win. And here's Stephanie Kitten, who I didn't think would have enough pace to rally into. She runs a spectacular race to be second. And like Wesley Ward 1-2 on Friday, Chad Brown 1-2 in this big race. And the Europeans take a licking but keep on ticking. And this was a spectacular result. I couldn't be more happy for everybody involved, including those that start with an advantage, New York Reds.
Yeah, very good. All right, the Philly and Mayer Sprint. We're going to watch the stretch run. Judy the Beauty doesn't have to face Groupie Doll in this race. She ran second to Groupie Doll last year. Most recently won a stake at Del Mar in the middle of August, so there's been a little bit of a layoff, but Judy the Beauty gets it done as the 3-1 favorite. Better Lucky second. Thank You, Mary Lou third. A little bit of a disappointment for some of the runners we saw do well up at Saratoga. Artemis Agritera runs 7th. Sweet Reason runs 8th in here, but a nice performance from Judy the Beauty and Wesley Ward.
Well, and you got to be happy in this regard. Here's a mare that has done some nice running and ran into a double champion. So she gets her opportunity and she capitalizes on it. A very gutty performance, holding off Better Lucky, who was brilliantly handled. Don't discount the job that Tom Albertrani, with some very clever placement and employment of Better Lucky. Big job there, and I didn't have Better Lucky appropriately on tickets the way I should have, and if she had won, it really would have hurt. But Judy the Beauty holds it and finishes a terrific weekend for Wesley Ward, no doubt. And I was pretty happy. The older horses held off those 3-year-olds that were involved, Artemis Agritera and Stone-tastic, etc. They'll have their chance next year.
All right, why don't we take a break here, and when we come back, we'll complete our look at the rest of the Saturday stakes races. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Loose on the Lead right after this.
I'm Brian Nadeau of HorsePlayerNow.com. Join me Friday, November 14th, here at the Clubhouse Racebook for a special happy hour bankroll. I'll be wagering $500 on behalf of 25 lucky patrons. So join me then, and let's win together.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome Again, sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow in the studio, Steve Bick live via phone from Southern California. Steve, let's just dive right back into it. The Turf Sprint on Saturday. We're going to watch number 6, Bobby's Kitten, getting it done over number 14, No Nay Never, and number 11, Undrafted. So it's Chad Brown over a couple of Wesley Ward runners. I took a little shot with the number 8, Something Extra, at 41-1. I thought my number 8 was in a pretty good spot at the top of the stretch, but just got swallowed up. But again, it continues a very nice day for Chad Brown and Wesley Ward. And Chad Brown continues kind of Bobby Frankel, and I don't know whether you saw the NBC broadcast or he mentioned this there live in post-race interviews or whatever, but he was kind of tying Bobby Frankel into the day. With Day at the Spa, he talked about not trying the mile with her and stretching out to longer, something he said he learned from Bobby Frankel. And of course this one, the Ken Ramsey horse, named after Bobby Frankel. And so Chad Brown tipped his hat to his former mentor, Bobby Frankel, a couple times during the afternoon.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that here's Bobby's kitten getting finally a opportunity in a big spot to do something that, you know, that he has shown with the speed that he has, and this is a course that rewards turnbacks. Horses that typically run from 7/8 to a mile and a 16th, they do notoriously well coming down the hill because it really isn't 6.5 furlongs. It's more like 7 and change. So horses that typically have the wind for speedy miles and speedy 7/8, they do very well consistently on the hill. And one of the other things that is a consistency when they run this race at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup is that West Coast horses that have familiarity with it, or the riders that have familiarity, and that's what you were dealing with Joel Rosario, who certainly won his share of races coming down the hill. And that was in evidence. Bobby's kitten, I mean, he finished, I mean, I haven't seen the Trackus numbers yet, but it has to be a eye-popping final quarter. He inhaled that field in the, you know, the last 150 yards. I'm rarely going to see a horse finish that fast. I mean, it was stunning. Big performance.
Yeah, we're looking at the chart. The stretch call, he's 12th, and he winds up winning. So it was a big move.
Amazing.
In the stretch. Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It's going to be number 7, Texas Red, over number 9, Carpe Diem, over number 13, Upstart. Really nice performance. Upstart, the New York bred, just gets caught late. That would have helped my exacta, because I liked Carpe Diem and Upstart to begin with. And as it got closer to the race, I took a look. You know, we scratched out American Pharoah and Calculator. They were the 1-2 finishers in the front runner. Texas Red ran 3rd. So late, and with the odds, I threw Texas Red into the mix. So I was hoping maybe Upstart would have helped juice up the exacta a little bit, but it will be Texas Red getting it done for the DeSormo brothers.
He more than got it done.
Yeah.
He demolished this field. And frankly, American Pharoah ends up as, you know, Zayat and Baffert, they're lucky they scratched because he wasn't beating Texas Red yesterday. No way, no how. This was a dominant performance. Frankly, anybody that listened to At the Races all week was all over this. They were all over Carpe Diem because of the visit we had with Bo Lane, you know, the farm where Carpe Diem was foaled. Daredevil, absolutely the horse that, if you were going to evaluate between the two Fletchers, he was the one to downgrade off the too big Champagne performance. Upstart, the one you want to upgrade. And indeed, that resulted, I mean, those that came along, frankly, with me, made out very nicely with that trifecta. And I'm delighted for not only for Keith DeSormo and Kent DeSormo, but there's a young owner involved, Eric Brame, who is the principal in this horse, 29 years old, and a guy who is really gung-ho about the game and is a perfect guy going forward. You're going to, I think, see a lot about him, and here it'll get a lot of publicity, deservedly, and may help expose the sport to a bunch of 30-something types. This is a very satisfying result, and gosh, a big figure for this one. A 104 buyer for Texas Red. Just a mammoth performance.
Absolutely. Then up next, the turf, and I had all of these horses in my mix, so I was pretty happy with the result here. Number 12, Main Sequence, gets it done at 6-1. Flintshire was the horse I had on top, and I thought that was a really nice win, a really nice performance off the second place finish to Trev in the Arc, and Twilight Eclipse for West Point Thoroughbreds continues to just keep up his lunchbox kind of performances where he's always in the hunt, runs 3rd at 19-1. Telescope, who was the 8-5 favorite, winds up running 4th in here. But boy, on the afternoon, some Eclipse Awards were settled. Clearly, the Turf Eclipse Award was settled here as Main Sequence wins his 4th Grade 1 of the year.
Now, there's a lot going on in this race, and got to be delighted for Flaxman Holdings. Flaxman has had a wonderful year internationally, and of course, they're not done on the day. They're going to win the mile an hour later. But Main Sequence has done nothing but win. And it's funny, you have watched him, and people kept saying, "Oh, I made fun of this all week. How people have criticized him. Oh, he barely got it done here, and oh, he wins, but oh, it's just so ridiculous." He's a horse that typically pulls himself up a little bit when he hits the front, and you can see John Velasquez absolutely keeps him at the task at hand and gives him a bunch of whacks within the shadow of the wire to make sure that he doesn't let Flintshire get back into him. Telescope was rallying and had no excuse really on the rail, and I don't know if I didn't see anything or hear anything from Ryan Moore about whether he kind of shied, and I don't know why he didn't finish. He looked like a winner at the 16th pole, but absolutely thrilled for Graham Motion, who wins this race again, and Kerry Gilbert, who is the Flaxman front person in Kentucky, in the U.S., the Niarchos family. They're great for American racing, and this was a satisfying result. The other big American, of course, Hardest Core. You saw with Hardest Core, Seth, why this is a tricky configuration at Santa Anita, because he got so keen coming down the hill. A lot of people are going to say Aurelius Vaz, he lost ground and he was this and that. Well, he did what he could with a horse that was over-eager. Hardest Core was much more patient in Chicago in the Arlington Million than he was yesterday. He was way too keen. Still ran he ends up 8th, just beating a handful of lengths. But certainly having, a horse like Main Sequence, Aldebaran, long departed from the U.S. breeding scene, gets himself another Breeders' Cup winner. It was kind of funny, and was happy for Graham Motion. Easy to root for.
Sprint was intriguing to me because the winner, number 13, Work All Week, comes from the very prolific ownership of Midwest Thoroughbreds, and you don't get to see Mr. Papis too much. They fly totally under the radar as far as being out in the public, but he was there in the winner's circle talking to NBC, so that was intriguing. Roger Brueggemann trains. Florent Giraud, who I think is starting to be a little bit on the come as a jockey, was riding. Number 13, Work All Week, over last year's winner, Secret Circle. Private Zone runs 3rd in the sprint, but again, it was intriguing to me. Homebred from Midwest Thoroughbreds, their first Breeders' Cup starter.
Well, and they're changing their philosophy. They've had a wonderful year, of course, with the Pizza Man. You talk about the owners being kind of shy. Roger Brueggemann is a mute. He barely...
and that was evident after the race.
Unbelievable. So I don't know. We may not have a conversation on the radio this week about the sprint winner. I'll have to go to Florent Giroux and break out my lousy French Canadian French. But Work All Week was tough to like for me, just because I thought there's too much pace in here, and between Fast Anna and the other speeds that you thought were going to be up on the front end, I just thought it was going to be hard to, with a frenetic pace, for him to stay on. What a gritty, terrific performance. Secret Circle looked like he was going to get there at one point, and Garcia had to shift, and I think that cost him a little bit of momentum. Secret Circle tries to win second time in a row from last year, but what are you going to do? He just was second best. The horse that was kind of victimized a little bit was Bourbon Courage. I mean, that's the horse. If you bet Bourbon Courage at 21-1, you want to chew your fist off, because he certainly was making progress from the 14 hole and kicked out way wide, lost some ground. There was a sidebar to this that I'm not going to let go. Hey, can Bill Nader now go sink back into his office in Hong Kong? Are we going to hear more glory tales of Rich Tapestry and his conquering of America? He managed to conquer 0 horses, finishing last. I was so sick of hearing how we were all going to be taught a lesson about the Lasix-free Rich Tapestry.
Yeah, I have to admit, I had Rich Tapestry on top, but boy, you knew he was done. You knew he was done.
I bought into all the nonsense.
Yeah, on a far turn.
And I was kicking myself, with 3/8 of the race in.
All right, and we got to go quickly here. Breeders' Cup Mile. This was the race that redeemed me. I had the exact in here. I had the top two in my third and fourth slots. I used obviously in Toronado on top, but Karakantai and Anadin run 1-2 in here in an upset, and the exacta for me was a nice way to kind of bounce me back to even on the weekend.
Yeah, and this was a huge performance, and gosh, I looked up at the board, and when they crossed the wire, I saw the 30-1, and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that he got off. I didn't see it on the board. I missed it, and that was for those of you that watch the board and so forth and make your adjustments, that was just a crazy overlay, and he was one of the international runners that had real opportunity in here. The 14 might have diminished your ardor for him a little bit, and deservedly. It's not the easiest post. It's not impossible, as Rick Hammerly explained to everybody. When the rails are down at Santa Anita, those outside posts are not completely kisses of death, but it ain't easy either. But he was spectacular winning this race. There's nothing you can say.
All right, Steve, we've got to move on, but we appreciate the visit. Back in the studio next week?
I guess so. I guess so. I don't think we're going. Let me ask Derby Barbie. Do we have anything next weekend, or am I in the studio? She says we'll see.
All right. Well, so we'll play it by ear. We'll play it, but we appreciate the visit this morning, and get home safely.
Thanks so much. Hope everybody enjoyed Breeders' Cup and did well.
All right, very good. Steve Bick, again, live from Southern California. And we're reaching out now to Gary West from ESPN.com, waiting to hear from the guys in the control room if we have made. And if it's not, you can try the other number as well. You can try the 214 and see if that winds up being a better number. And I'll just hold on. And again, Bayern, when we covered the Breeders' Cup Classic, obviously at the top of the recap here, Bayern over Tosa New York over California Chrome. As I said, my take was, we needed the DQ. But, I get it. They don't typically make those decisions at the start. And as Steve said, that's a consistency kind of thing. And I can kind of agree with that. My argument, I guess, is I wish they were consistent in making those decisions at the start. So, it's a little bit of a situation where maybe it is it's a broader question that maybe this race will bring up the discussion a little bit. So, we'll see how that plays out as we move forward from this race and the fallout takes place. All right, I'm told we do have Gary West from ESPN.com. Gary, I'm sorry we ran over with our recap of races, but we got about 5 minutes left to kind of get some of your thoughts on Breeders' Cup. Good morning.
Well, good morning. How are you? I'm sure you're running over because there was so much excitement and discussion about everything that happened.
Yeah, and I'll get right to it. The controversy yesterday in the Classic, I said earlier, I thought there should have been a DQ. My partner Steve Bick was on earlier, said, that just to be consistent, they don't seem to make those decisions at the start of the race, so this was consistent. And I kind of agree with that. I guess my bigger question is, I wish they were consistent making decisions at the gate, because I think a lot of times things early in the race are overlooked as compared to what happens in the stretch. To me, that absolutely affected the outcome of the race, and I would have liked to have seen a DQ yesterday, but what are your thoughts?
I would have too. I thought it was a craven decision not to take the horse down. In a $5 million race, they would have to do so. And Steve's right, and you're right, that in most races, jockeys and horses are given some latitude there at the start. But this was extreme. He didn't just come over one path. He didn't just bump one horse. He ducked in and wiped out the favorite, first of all, and then wiped out the competing speed, Moreno, a 4-horse. And so you're right, it completely changed the race. And the stewards rationalized their decision by saying that at the point it happened, at the start, it did not affect the outcome. And that, of course, is absurd.
Yeah.
If that's what they think, they shouldn't be in the steward stand. That was just outrageous. Now, that said, Bayern ran a tremendous race. He just gave a scintillating performance. going fast on the lead and pressed every step of the way by Taste of New York. And then the final time, 1:59.4, something like that, was outstanding. So you have to weigh on one hand, what is it fair that the horse that might have won the race is eliminated? On the other hand, is it fair to disqualify a horse like Byron who ran such a tremendous race? There's no easy decision here, but I think for the casual fan who went out there and saw yesterday's races, I think he would be very turned off.
Yeah, and it clearly left kind of an empty feeling to the weekend, which was otherwise, I thought, a great weekend. If you're a bettor, it was a little bit chalky on Friday. Things lit up a little bit on Saturday. Just give us your impressions overall of the 2 days of racing.
Well, I thought Friday's racing was outstanding, and Saturday was exciting. But once again, we had a very speed-biased surface at Santa Anita, especially early in the day. It had rained Friday night and even Saturday morning, and they sealed the track. And the first 4 races were all won by a horse who was on the lead at the opening half mile. And in fact, and I forget exactly which race it was, a horse in the first or second race went 44 flat and still kept going. It was ridiculous. It was just silly crazy early in the day. Now, by the time the Juvenile came up, obviously the track had dried out and it had been cut up a little bit, and so it was very different. It had slowed down probably 10 lengths from early in the day. So it made it exciting and interesting, but at the same time you have to wonder how that affected the race as well, because there were 8 races on the main track yesterday, and 5 of them were won by front runners. And some horses that probably would have had a chance in races didn't have much of a chance at all.
And Gary, got about a minute left, but I just want to touch on the human stories. And you were out there. What was the buzz around the track over a couple of days? Rosie Napravnik retires. Wesley Ward and Chad Brown, a couple of big days for them on the human side. What stood out?
Well, I think the big story is Rosie, of course, because she's at the summit of her career, and she's no longer just a great female jockey. She is a great jockey. I mean, she outrides guys every day. I think she is an elite jockey, one of the best jockeys in America, without question. And to retire at that point is stunning. But I applaud her decision. She's been injured through her career. She's accomplished a great deal, and now she wants to have a family. I just think that's very admirable. And I also thought it was wonderful that Wesley Ward and Chad Brown had such success, because they are both outstanding trainers. And to finally get this recognition on a national stage for those guys, I thought was wonderful.
And I'll just ask you quickly, because we got to go, but one other thing I talked about a little earlier already. Midwest Thoroughbreds, the most prolific owner in the country over the past few years, their first Breeders' Cup starter, work all week, homebred, gets it done, and I think that's the first time I've ever seen the owner actually talk, because they float completely under the radar.
Yeah, that was, again, a situation where some people had been winning a lot of races and accomplishing a lot of great things, and finally got the recognition on the national stage. But a horse who, by the way, is still unbeaten on dirt.
Yeah.
He did fly under the radar. And by that point in the day, the track was not all that speed biased, although it was still very kind of speed. The horse went 1, 2, 3 around the track for the entire journey in the Classic. But I think he probably was just the best horse.
Okay, Gary, we got to let you go. We got to wrap things up, but we appreciate the visit, and I'm looking forward to popping over to ESPN.com and reading your commentary on the Breeders' Cup.
Very good, Seth. Always good talking to you.
Thanks a lot. Gary West from ESPN.com. That'll wrap things up for this edition of Loose on the Lead. We're here every Sunday morning. Don't forget, questions, comments, suggestions, looseonthelead@yahoo.com. The clock on the wall says I'm over time, so I'm going to wrap things up. Don't forget, we get back into morning programming tomorrow when we kick off a new week with plenty of Breeders' Cup conversation all week long. Handicapper support at 9. Racing Across America at 10. We'll wrap things up for today. Enjoy the races this afternoon. Cash a few tickets. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.